Howdy. Welcome to Ausgrave Royalty. I am Justin. Thanks for stopping by. In this video, I want to introduce King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, our next book series. Really excited about this one. For those who don't know, last season, which was the first season of the channel, we covered Archetypes by Dr. Anthony Stevens, A Natural History of the Self. Highly recommended. And season 2, wow, we made it. And for veterans of the channel, I had mentioned that, it's funny about this King, Warrior, Magician book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover book by Robert L. Moore and Douglas Gillette. It was actually the first archetypal psychology book that I read. And then it kind of opened the doors to Mary Louise von Franz, Robert Johnson, and Dr. Anthony Stevens here with season 1's book. But I want, with every book you read in that genre, it expands like your kind of sixth sense for your own subjective horizons. Like, where do I want to go next? What trails do I want to follow within the genre? And also, objectively, when creating, thinking about the material and trying to introduce it to people, the best way to do that. And even though King, Warrior, Magician, Lover was my first entry, I chose Archetypes by Dr. Anthony Stevens because it laid the theoretical foundations for the subject matter. That was the point of the book. The point of King, Warrior, Magician, Lover is that of application, not of theoretical foundation, so to speak. So in Archetypes, we learned what they were, their biological nature, their psychological nature, how they impact society, how they impact childhood and self-development. It's like, what don't they affect, I highly recommend checking out that series. A lot of good information there, and picking up the book, of course, at some point if you dig that kind of stuff. But we're now into the application of archetypal psychology. And while there was, while there were mentions of how to actually use the archetypes for your own self-development in the first season, it was secondary priority compared to the first priority, which was laying down the foundations and getting an understanding of what the hell archetypes are, and because there's unfortunately, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again, when you hear archetypes, it sounds esoteric, like palm reading or whatever. No concrete image comes to mind, So season 1 was about unpacking that and exploring what an archetype actually is. Now, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover are actual archetypes that are not arbitrary, that have been examined by Robert L. Moore and Douglas Gillette. And I say not arbitrary in the sense that, you can't just call them pasta, sandwich, steak, wheelchair. The reason why they're called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover is because it takes into account the anthropological evidence of all these cultures, like in the vein of Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell feeds archetypal psychology, basically, and with the knowledge of religious practices, religious myths, customs, culture, mating practices, initiation rituals, all that stuff. And this work by Robert L. Moore and Douglas Gillette examines how kingship and warriorship and magicianship and lovership, for lack of a better term, how they've played out in all the various cultures and humanity throughout history. And then applying that with Jung's psychological aspect, and you get a sort of actionable, prescriptive almost way of self-diagnosis. And Alan Watts, we've talked about him on the channel a lot. He had this funny thing where he was like, is self-help even possible? Because how is the self that needs the help also supposed to be the self that's doing the help, you know? It's like akin to pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps is how you put it. And yeah, it's something I struggled with in my own like self-improvement journey. Like, yeah, I can journal. Yeah, I can take peaceful walks and contemplate. But no matter what, I can't, wherever I go, there I am, you know? Even if I'm like trying to unpack my own issues, it's still coming from the place that is me, you know? And I lose a lot of objectivity. And if I lose objectivity, then I'm, to a certain degree, then I'm just chasing my own tail. Like I am pulling myself up by my own bootstraps, you know? And, you know, like, and I don't even know, like, broadly speaking, what does improving a self even mean? You know? That's what led me to all this. And yeah, I just, when I learned, again, this was King Warrior Magician Lover was the first book in this archetypal psychology subject that I read. And it was a breath of fresh air because it paved the way for a more objective way of self-diagnosis and something I could take with me all my life from now on. Whenever things happen, I can look at it through this paradigm, and that's the power here. It's the paradigm. It's not, again, you can't get completely away from subjectivity when you're doing any kind of self-work. I think. But it at least gives you some tools, you know, and they're not, they're quite potent when you come to understand all of what they entail. Right. So I want to share this. I discovered this book. You know, how did I find this? You know, I have a background in philosophy, and I'm naturally interested in all these subject matters. And I thought I had heard it all, like all schools of thought, the philosophers, psychologists, whatever. But my mom actually got me this book that she found randomly when searching Barnes and Noble. She thought I might be interested in it. She didn't know what it was, but it looked like something I'd be into. And I got it for Christmas. And that's actually how I discovered this. Is that quaint or what? Like, the subject matter found me, you know? Yeah, I just like that. And again, I like things that aren't just pure philosophy or pure psychology or pure anthropology or pure myth study, pure hero's journey stuff. I like when they all come together, you know? And that's what this book is. It just takes aspects from all kinds of things and then forges all that rich raw material into like very expressive, flexible, potent tools for use in self-development. And you know, I call this series King Warrior Magician Lover because that's what we'll be covering. However, literally, it is a book. I have it here. Yeah. King Warrior Magician Lover, more in Gillette. And, but because I love you guys so much, I went kind of nuts and I got all the other books, and it's actually a series. So we got the Magician Within. And I'm sure you might know what's coming here. The Lover Within. King Within. Oh, yeah. And the Warrior Within. Yeah. So I did research for all these books. It took me a lot longer than I thought. But I mean, it's a labor of love. But this, the main book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, was the one that I guess it's the most accessible because it kind of gives the nuts and bolts of each one all in one place. But if you really want to dig in, you can get the other books in the series. So, I will be talking about King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. All you really need, my strongest recommendation is for the main book. But of course, the highest recommendation goes to all those other books in the series as well, if you like the main book, So yeah, I pooled my research for this series from all of these books. And they're out of print now, actually. The standalone books. I searched. I had to. I paid quite a bit for them, and they were kind of hard to find. But I'm lucky to have them. So I wanted to really bring all the knowledge I could into this series. If I'm gonna cover this as best I can, I want to have the maximum. To an extent. Of course, I can't research every single thing, but I at least wanted to go the extra mile and, get those off main books for y'all. So just wanted to note about that. Yeah, again, we'll continue the 2 episodes a week on this channel. One kind of off book channel video per week, and then one book series video per week. So 22 videos are planned, 11 weeks. Yeah. And I'll post the schedule below. I said this before with Dr. Anthony Stevens and his book Archetypes, but another reason I love all this stuff is the authors are so damn good at writing. And I've said this a lot before, that one main problem with philosophy is just the incomprehensible the impenetrable intellectualism in the writing, reinventing the definitions of all these words. Just I'm looking at you, Immanuel Kant. But with these books, Dr. Stevens, Dr. Moore, Gillette, it's just they're doing us all a favor, meeting us where we are in writing, making sure the writing is clear, because it's almost like the more complex the subject, the more of a burden it is on the author, if they have any integrity, to make the writing clear. And that's what I love about these books. They're just written so well, so clearly. Beyond the books and all this, Robert L. Moore himself is kind of a character. And I'll link below, but the Jungian Institute has an audio series of his lectures on this subject, and they're absolutely incredible. Just shy of Alan Watts's live lectures. They're kind of on par to me, actually, and that's saying a lot. But there are like maybe 40, 50, 60 hours of Robert Moore's lectures on the topics we're about to cover. I did not include purposefully those information from those lectures. I considered it, but I wanted to recommend it for people to keep it fresh for people who like the subject but wanted an even more dive into it. And again, he's a as good as a writer as he is, he's a great speaker as well. Very charismatic. And that's how I found out about the Archetypes book by Dr. Anthony Stevens. He cites people. You know, he throws out a bunch of names, and whenever he does, I write it down, and I know it's valuable. He's kind of a good canary, a good connector for like where to go next if you like a certain topic, right? Yeah, he's just a great guide through the subject matter. So yeah, in this series, it's organized into dividing it out between king, warrior, magician, and lover. And I'm not going to be able to cover everything. And the main thing I would say that I had to kind of leave out for my purposes is the mythology part, like the anthropological side. I focus on the Jungian tie-ins, the psychological tie-ins, and all that. And I de-emphasize the role they played in historical cultures. Why? It's hard to talk about that dimension of it without then talking about the culture it's also associated to, so that when you hear some sort of custom or whatever, you can have the right context. Like, for instance, if there were brutal male initiation rituals, right? No ritual stands alone. Like, there's a purpose for it. Why are they initiated in that way? It's going to relate to other aspects of that particular culture. And to go through all those aspects, and then where they're placed in history, like were they pre-Roman Empire, whatever. Like, there's a historical dimension too to give context to. It quickly snowballs into out of control. And I want to stay focused on the psychological, self-helpy kind of dimension. And frankly, I know my mind, and I'm not the best person to articulate that dimension of this subject matter. I will say, if you want that, Robert Moore's audio lectures are great. He goes through a lot of that stuff. And there are mentions of all that in the books. Right. So I just want to point you in that direction, and I want to be clear about that. Like, I can't do everything. And again, I've said this before, but I am not an authority on all this. I'm a fan of this. I'm an amateur. I hold no formal credentials when it comes to this stuff. I'm learning all this with y'all. But I'm an enthusiastic fan that wants to point people in the direction of good ideas, and I think this body of work represents a set of great ideas. I want to go over a little blurb of archetypes for newcomers just while we're here. I have some notes here. Archetypes represent psychobiological predispositions which serve specific purposes based on the expected environments for the human animal, and which evolved through the process of natural selection. Archetypes both reside in the body in terms of neural pathways in the brain hemispheres, as well as the limbic system. That's from a biological perspective, like the way our brains developed and the way the hemispheres communicate back and forth, trying to interpret the reality they're presented with. The left being the very robotic, language, logic-driven side, and the right being the like intuitive, visual side, like symbolic. And they're both at work in everybody. It's just some people are dominant on that side. And Jung actually saw individuation, the process of individuation, becoming an individual, as maximizing the clarity of communication through both hemispheres. Because neurosis can develop if you're like in an extreme on one side or the other. The point is, like, there is no tabula rasa. Tabula rasa is like there's nothing installed. There's, you know, in our psychology when we're born. Archetypal psychology says no. We're wired for certain types of human experiences. Like, we're psychologically prepared. We're psychologically prepared to learn language, say, to have a mother archetypal figure, a father archetypal figure. And it's not concerning this particular mother or this particular father. It's about having the characteristics of the mother and father bond made manifest. We're genetically prepared to receive that kind of experience. That gives archetypal psychology a scientific basis. This is what we covered last season, so please check that out. So Moore and Gillette are asserting that there is a king, warrior, magician, and lover archetype. That is to say, a genetic, non-arbitrary predisposition within us that exists in all of us at birth. And they may not be actualized at birth, but, you know, the apps are installed, so to speak. And to be clear, women have these archetypes as well, which they can access through their animus. Yes, women have kings, and men have queens, which we access through our anima. We all have access to all the archetypes. Just like all iPhones have access to all the apps on the App Store. But not all apps on the App Store are typically installed on one individual phone, right? King, warrior, magician, and lover are the distinctly masculine archetypes articulated by Moore and Gillette. We'll first be talking about why Moore and Gillette are so concerned with these topics in general, and the four archetypes in their immature forms, what they call boy psychology. And there's actually healthy boy psychology and unhealthy boy psychology, and we'll unpack all of that, don't worry. And those are the primitive forms for what develop into the mature king, warrior, magician, lover, masculine archetypes. In the closing episodes, I'll be summing up a lot of what some of Dr. Stevens' king, warrior, magician, lover combined. There's just so much going on, and I'm taking the time, a few episodes, to kind of just step back. Let's look at the fundamentals of archetypal psychology and do kind of a level set. At that point in this series, we'll have covered king, warrior, magician, lover, the boy psychology, all that stuff, the shadow aspects. There's a lot going on in the psyche, and I spend episodes unpacking that. Kind of wrapping up here, I do want to mention one strange elephant in the room. If you look into Robert L. Moore, I don't want to bring this up, but I have integrity and I want to share it with my viewers and not have them find it, you know? But there's a bit of a morbid story about the manner in which he passed away and his wife passed away. I'm not going to talk about that for a lot of reasons. If you are interested, please do your own research, of course. I'll link an interview below by one of the family members of the Moore family about what may or may not have transpired, and just it's a tangled web. But I wanted to at least share that so that you're not blindsided like I actually was when I kind of got into this, and then I learned about that and I was like, oh. And I had a thought like, you know, how much does it take to separate the art from the artist? You know, if the artist's life was a certain way, it tends to contextualize the kind of work he does. So like if a fat person was selling diet books, right? You might be suspicious. In the same way, can a person who had a miserable life, that wasn't Robert L. Moore, that's not what I'm saying. But for example, like the fat person, can a person who had a miserable life, knowing that, can you really look at the ideas objectively, or should you? You know, that's a question, you know, you can chase your own tail on. I think it comes down to the individual, whether they can, hang on and maintain that separation. For me, I could, with the Moore situation and the book's material, for better or worse. But, you know, I admit my own biases. I'm optimistic and I'm not cynical, but I respect people who, you know, are a bit more cynical about the world, and they may find themselves, like those types may have a bit more of a trouble than I did separating based on what all happened. Anyway, enough about that. But I can't do a series on this without mentioning that elephant in the room so that you're not blindsided, right? Yeah, that's really all I wanted to cover in this introductory video. I'm super excited. This is what got me into the subject matter. I'm just like a pig in mud about all this. I'm devouring everything I can, and you know, it's like this is what I would always be into if money were no object, you know. But yeah, I really hope you get something out of the series. I want this to be a conversation starter. Like, my first priority is that it gives you tools to help self-diagnose. A tool that you can carry with you, reinterpret your past with, do whatever self-work you need. These are great tools. Second, I want to start a community, a conversation about all this. This is not scripture. This is food for thought, ultimately. And yeah, comment down below. I'll have all the useful links. Make sure to check out the description and links in my videos. I try and be thorough about anything I mention. It's a really valuable part and a way to maximize the value of each video I put out. So yeah, that's about it. And I'll see y'all in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.